faithfully conveying value and interpreting great books from around the world. Hi there, this is Sally with the Book Talks. Today, I'll interpret for you this book called The Search for Truth in the Nordic Lands of Ice and Fire. The Nordic region consists of 5 countries in Northern Europe: Denmark, Iceland, Norway, Finland, and Sweden. To find these 5 countries, it's simple. Open a map, find Russia, then look west from Russia, and you'll see Finland, Sweden, and Norway. Long north, south, and short east, west, and Denmark. North and south facing each other across the sea, with a small Denmark sandwiched in between. Denmark acts as a bridge between the Nordic region and mainland Europe. From Norway, further northwest, over 1,000 kilometers in the North Atlantic, between the snow-covered Greenland and the European continent, lies Iceland, isolated and distant from the rest of the Nordic region. Folks, although the 5 Nordic countries are small in size and cold in climate, they rank high in many organizations' evaluations. Many people consider them the happiest, most prosperous countries in the world, a model of an ideal society. Are Nordic people really that happy? Honestly, even Europeans themselves don't know enough about this land. Um, According to the book, Miles Booth, a British author living in Denmark, jokes that people elsewhere in the UK probably know more about primitive tribes in the Amazon basin than about Nordic people and their lives. The book's author, Booth, is a best-selling writer who married a Danish wife, has lived long-term in Copenhagen, and often contributes to media like The Guardian and The Times. Booth's writing is witty and sharp. He was dissatisfied with how people depicted the 5 Nordic countries as uniform and lacking depth. So he spent 4 years traveling through big cities and small towns, interviewing politicians, scholars, experts, and ordinary people, presenting readers with a real, vivid, and multi-layered Nordic region. Next, let's follow in Booth's footsteps and discuss whether the real Nordic region is as happy as people imagine. First, let's talk about Denmark, the smallest in territory among the 5 Nordic countries, but with the highest external evaluation. Denmark borders northern Germany to the south with an area of just over 40,000 square kilometers, only slightly larger than Hainan Island. With a population of over 5 million, this small country that can be driven across in 4 hours was surprisingly named the world's happiest country by the UN and EU. But before reaching this happy life, Denmark in history once tasted the bitterness of declining from its peak. Long ago, the Danes ruled the entire Scandinavian peninsula, reaching their peak power in the 14th century. But soon, Denmark suffered repeated defeats in conflicts with neighboring countries. They were successively defeated by Sweden and Germany, signing humiliating treaties again and again, losing vast territories and colonies, causing their national power to plummet. It wasn't until after World War II, through the Marshall Plan, that Denmark received $385 million in aid from the US, truly achieving economic takeoff. The continuous shrinking of territory and sphere of influence, along with repeated failures, made the Danish national character become introverted, restrained, and conservative. Danes like to huddle together for warmth, adhering to shared values. Under external pressure, Danes cling to their dwindling resources on greatly reduced territory, like huddling together on a life raft. Compared to other Nordic countries, Danes are sociable and cohesive. On average, each Dane joins 3 associations, with over 1/3 participating in clubs. Booth once attended a traditional Danish choir event. The voices of 300 to 400 choir members interlocked, showing strong collective consciousness. Danes huddled together, fear external forces. During national decline, Danes chose active contraction, meaning consciously closing themselves off and cherishing society's simple joys. Thus, Danes developed extraordinary self-satisfaction, appearing somewhat parochial to a degree. Take Danish news reporting as an example. Their media often places mundane domestic events in prime position while ignoring global happenings. For instance, on the day Japan had a tsunami and Libya's civil war began, Danish newspapers headlined how renters paying home insurance could lower their rent. Subjectively, Danish happiness comes from weathering storms, then cherishing the present and being content. Objectively, Danish happiness is inseparable from national and social systems. Denmark's terrifyingly high tax rate might reach up to 72% when told. Yet, Danes don't oppose high taxes because they guarantee everything is state-funded. Ordinary people don't need to worry about the risks of illness or unemployment. Danish happiness also stems from indistinct social class divisions. Danes strive to build a classless society, largely due to their massive middle class. Statistics show 90% of Danes enjoy similar living standards. In such a society, people easily develop feelings of happiness. At Danish parties, parliamentarians and farmers debate fiercely. Famous news anchors chat warmly with roof repair workers. However, this happiness has side effects too. One ongoing debate in Danish society is whether high taxes cause low productivity, stifle creativity and innovation, and encourage conservatism. Take choirs. If you're just one of hundreds, you need no creativity or initiative. Just follow along, even slack off. People worry this Danish collectivism could make the country unsustainable. That's Denmark covered. Next, let's discuss less happy Iceland. Iceland lies isolated in the North Atlantic, northwest of Europe, at 133,000 square kilometers, similar to China's Zhejiang province. It has just over 300,000 people. Icelanders descend from fugitives, 9th century outlaws fleeing western Norway. Traveling westward, they passed Scotland and Ireland, growing in number before settling in Iceland. For centuries afterward, Iceland had no laws, religion, officials, king, or army. In the 13th century, Norwegian intervention converted Icelanders to Christianity, but conditions hardly improved. Visiting then, you'd find widespread famine, rampant plague, volcanic eruptions, and harsh conditions. And you'd hear of a bishop beheaded, pirates attacking somewhere, choking on volcanic ash with dead livestock at your feet. You'd look up to see a polar bear on a nearby iceberg. Yet Iceland has known happiness too. Marshall Plan funds enabled massive infrastructure projects, boosting fishing and heavy industry, bringing economic prosperity and surging incomes. By late 20th century, Iceland was highly developed, ranking top in economic freedom, with social harmony, gender equality, and long lifespans. But the good times didn't last. Icelanders, like their Viking ancestors, ignored orders, broke rules, chased profits madly, squandered their advantages, plunging the country into bankruptcy crisis and falling from the peak of happiness to the abyss. Simply put, from 2003 to 2008, Iceland's 3 banks lent out massive loans equivalent to 10 times Iceland's GDP and 56 times the central bank's reserves. A nationwide frenzy ensued, with irrational entrepreneurs launching unprecedented international acquisitions. Ordinary people spent extravagantly without batting an eye. For example, spending £5,000 on a few bottles of whiskey, or £100,000 to go hunting in Britain, and so on. At the end of 2008, the U.S. financial crisis triggered a global financial tsunami, and Iceland's debt reached 850% of GDP. Within just a few weeks, Iceland's unemployment rate skyrocketed, the currency plummeted, people's homes and cars became negative assets, and the economy collapsed completely. Iceland's bankruptcy had 2 major reasons. The superficial reason is their short-sighted mentality of living in the moment, just getting through today. Iceland's climate is terrifying, with frequent volcanic eruptions. Nature is too powerful and too harsh. Icelanders developed a character that is both broad-minded and fearless. Since volcanoes couldn't destroy them, the international financial market was nothing to fear. So after the 1980s, profits from fishing were diverted to the banking sector. Icelandic fishermen transformed into bankers, buying and selling frantically, conquering territories, massively acquiring foreign assets, accumulating huge debts. Ultimately, due to distorted financial industry development and extreme virtual economy expansion, the economy crashed. However, the deeper reason for Iceland's bankruptcy lies in corruption. Iceland has a very small population, so many Icelanders are multitaskers. Journalists are fishing guides. The prime minister is a poet. The foreign minister also works as a physiotherapist. The small population leads to extremely tight social bonds. Key figures in politics and business mostly attended the same schools and universities, creating fertile ground for cliques. Those in power formed factions for personal gain, leading to pervasive corruption. For example, Iceland's president once refused to sign a bill aimed at breaking private companies' media monopoly. But if signed, it would harm friends and relatives working in media. These close connections ultimately caused a lack of democracy, preventing Iceland from having strong rational forces to detect and correct mistakes when it went astray. From Iceland's example, we see Nordic life isn't all happiness. Lack of rational planning plunged Iceland into trouble. When it comes to rationality, Norwegians could teach Icelanders a thing or two. Next, let's talk about Norway. For a long time, Norway was a poor Nordic nation of farmers and fishermen. Its barren land spans 385,000 square kilometers, similar to China's Yunnan province, yet only 2.8% is arable, forcing people to seek livelihoods in perilous seas. But in 1969, Norway struck oil, like hitting the jackpot. Oil propelled Norway's GDP per capita to become the world's second highest behind only Luxembourg. With sparse population, just 11 people per square kilometer, 3/4 live within 10 miles of the coast. Scattered communities isolated by mountains and seas formed self-contained micro-societies. Norwegians' love for nature even ascends to patriotic heights. Many Norwegian names relate to mountains and rivers. Someone once created an incredibly dull TV show, live streaming nature views from a cruise ship camera. Its blunt tagline, "Tune in for normally dry TV live broadcasts." Yet this show caused nationwide viewing frenzy, becoming Norway's most popular program ever. The protagonist was simply the scenery. As mentioned earlier, Norwegians' happy life stems from rationality. With just 5 million people, Norway holds the world's largest sovereign wealth fund. Before 2020, this fund was projected to exceed £1 trillion. Norwegians manage this windfall with extreme caution, like a farmer tenderly caring for blooming orchids. They've bought stakes in over 8,000 global companies and diverse assets for preservation and growth. Chasing wealth, some countries obsess over skyscrapers. Icelanders embraced reckless spending. How did Norwegians resist temptation and avoid squandering oil revenues? The key lies in Norway's national psyche. It remained poor for so long. Historically, without prior saving and storing, there'd be no winter food. This makes Norwegians dislike extravagance, always mindful of savings, developing frugal spending habits. Thus, through precise and cautious investments, Norway safely weathered the global economic crisis with significant growth. Having covered rational Norway, next we discuss Finland, the somewhat overlooked among Nordic nations. Finland borders Russia to the east, geographically and culturally at east-west crossroads. Long isolated, it's historically marginalized in Europe. Finland covers 338,000 square kilometers, just slightly smaller than Norway. Finland's chaotic history, ruled by Sweden for 600 years, then Russia for 100, gaining independence only in early 20th century. Sweden deeply influenced Finland. Swedish was once its sole official language. Even today, 300,000 Swedish Finns wield remarkable social influence. Finnish people have reserved personalities. They enjoy solo hiking, trekking, and solitude. They prefer listening, shy to express, especially saying, I love you. A Finnish husband might fix the washing machine to express deep love to his wife. Silent Finns love saunas most. Every two Finns share one, with over 2.5 million nationwide more than cars. Even parliament members convene in saunas. Finns are most renowned for their honesty and reliability. Finland is the Eurozone's only AAA-rated economy, meaning agencies consider its national credibility excellent. Finland ranks among world's least corrupt places, with Denmark and New Zealand. If a Finn tells you they'll deliver firewood on Friday, they'll definitely come. If you fall through ice hanging by a thread, you'd pray the next passerby is Finnish. Booth believes Finland. Booth believes Finland's long marginalization and isolation before reemergence makes them especially concerned about others' perceptions. A joke, a German, a Finn, and a Frenchman see an elephant in Africa. The German considers killing it for ivory profit. The Frenchman sincerely admires its beauty and creation's wonder. The Finn says, I wonder what this elephant thinks about Finland. Finland's outstanding education system is their source of pride and happiness. Booth believes happy people must control their own destiny, and Finland's education system ensures this dream comes true. Finland has the world's most comprehensive education system and best schools, ranking top in many international evaluations. In Finnish schools, educational resources are balanced. No distinction between public and private, nor between elite and poor schools. Whether in remote Lapland or Helsinki, a Finnish child receives consistently high-quality education. Finland's educational advancement stems primarily from substantial state funding. Teachers hold high status in Finland. Even today, a quarter of graduates choose teaching first, harder to enter than law or medicine. Since the 1970s, Finland requires and funds teachers to earn PhDs. Thus, Finnish teachers possess high competence in research methods and critical thinking, ensuring schools continually cultivate quality, modern citizens. That covers honest, education-focused Finland. Finally, we discuss the largest and most populous Nordic nation. Sweden sits at the center of the Nordic puzzle. At 450,000 square kilometers, same size as China's Heilongjiang province. From the 9th to 10th centuries, Sweden expanded through raiding, invasion, trade, and colonization. Later ruled by Denmark, it declared independence in the 16th, 17th centuries. Through wars, Sweden gained vast continental territories, rising as a European power. For over 500 years, Sweden remained Nordic's focal point, admired and influential among neighboring nations. Today, Sweden is a neutral nation. Its achievements in industry, education, finance, and healthcare make it a model, balanced, modern society. Swedes appear serious, reserved, and dull to outsiders, mysteriously aloof. Their motto is lagom, meaning collective willing restraint. For example, Swedish women minimize moaning during childbirth, afterward questioning if they cried too much. If not, they'd be very pleased. At Swedish funerals, mild sobbing is acceptable, but not desperate wailing. If someone expresses overly intense emotions, it's remembered for years. Compared to Finnish reserve, Swedes display ruthlessly pragmatic spirit in social structures and historical choices. During World War II, Sweden sold iron to Germans, extensively traded with Nazis for profit, safely navigating the war. Post-war, they rapidly developed using Marshall Plan funds. This pragmatism manifests as exceptional collective action in daily life. In 1967, Sweden decided to switch driving from left to right side. On September 30th evening, nationwide compliance happened instantly without disruption. Women hold very high status in Sweden. Some say Swedish women are world's happiest. Their strong women's rights focus is a major social revolution achievement. Sweden once established gender equality ministry to oversee anti-discrimination laws. They mandate paternity leave. New fathers get 2 months off at 80% salary. This is called daddy leave. For gender equality, they implemented supporting measures like reduced childcare fees. Swedish parents pay only about 1,000 renminbi monthly to send infants to daycare. In 2017, Sweden's per capita income was approximately 360,000 renminbi. Thus, monthly childcare costs just 2 days' wages for Swedes. Now, over 80% of Swedish children start daycare at 12 to 18 months, aiding mothers return to work. Um, Old school chivalry is unwelcome. In Sweden, holding doors for women often draws puzzled or hostile reactions. Their attitude, don't oppress me with chivalry. Swedish men do more housework than anywhere globally, even to the point where Swedish women find it excessive. A former Miss Sweden described Swedish men as velvet daddies and diaper-changing sissies. Is gender equality necessarily perfect? Booth says that, from another perspective, this development also pressures women, forcing early separation from their children. If a Swedish woman admits wanting to stay home caring for children, she'll likely be criticized as old-fashioned and face discrimination. Booth adds that Swedes often take gender equality pursuit to extremes. One parliament required male employees to sit while urinating to eliminate restroom gender differences. Currently, a dark cloud hangs over Swedish happiness, immigration, especially refugee issues. Sweden is the world's third largest refugee destination, accepting about 30,000 annually. Refugees fleeing conflicts from Africa, Central Asia, and Middle East. But Sweden's welfare system wasn't designed for non-Western immigrants' needs. New immigrants initially receive substantial benefits. But after basic living allowances, immigrants struggle to overcome barriers for long-term development. For example, Swedish names often end with son. Employers favor such applicants during resume screening, leaving most immigrants jobless and welfare dependent. This creates urban ghettos, vicious cycles, sparking domestic tensions. Sweden's generous refugee acceptance relates to W2O. During 221, Sweden didn't resist Germans and hindered allies, creating Swedish guilt. In Booth's view, Swedes' political correctness and immigrant openness stem from this guilt. Swedes recognize they once disappointed others, so now strive to compensate. Immigration has become perpetual left-right debate in Sweden. Though many deny it, alarmingly, immigrants and refugees trigger violent crimes. How to integrate them? Sweden hasn't found viable solutions. All right, that covers all 5 Nordic countries. Nordic people always top happiness rankings. Actually, happiness is hard to measure. It's subjective. It varies by whom you ask, and perceptions of undisturbed solitude differ. To most Nordic people, happiness means being surrounded by beautiful nature and controlling one's own destiny. Not being disturbed is happiness. But if you look closely at the 5 Nordic countries, each has its own challenges, such as refugee issues, corruption from massive public spending, high taxes hindering social development, and so on. The English title of this book is The Almost Nearly Perfect People, meaning people who fall just short of perfection. As the author sees it, just as every cloud has a silver lining, every happiness legend has flaws. We shouldn't deify the Nordic region. Of course, the Nordic region has many merits worth learning: strong social cohesion, gender equality, rational education, serving as models for future societies. All right, that concludes our interpretation of the Nordic book. Keynotes and below the audio. See you tomorrow.